So this is an additional video trying to set the timing on the gx390 Honda. We're doing a retrofit for the Chinese starter assembly. So we have that installed. The problem you're going to have, as I discussed in the prior video, your keyway is off if it's a 2011 or newer engine. So I'm going to show you what you can do that nobody's covered. So we have the old flywheel on installed with a keyway, and we've set our magnet just in front here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of aluminum. Don't use metal. You got to get a piece of aluminum, and what you're going to do is you're going to set it across the crank and touch up against this assembly here with a magnet, the metal part of the magnet just about to engage with this assembly. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set this in here right against that assembly. We're going to lay it across the crank. You're going to bend it slightly here and bend it here. Okay, this is going to be our position marker when we put on the other flywheel, because we're going to not use the keyway, but we have to have our timing perfect. And then you take a punch or something and you scratch your crank. You need two positions, and hopefully the camera's picking that up. So we got two marks on the crank here, one there and one there. Okay, so this, I know this crank has to be at that position. Okay, and the magnet on the flywheel, which will not have the keyway, has to be here. So now all we need to do after we've done this is we removed our old flywheel. We removed the keyway, which I'll do really quick. The magnet width's a little bit different on this aftermarket flywheel also. It's a little bit different. Get this keyway out. Another thing you want to do with these keys, magnetize them. Set them in a magnetic dish. That's aluminum, but it'll magnetize them somewhat so they'll stay. See, it's got a little bit of magnetic force to it. So now what we're going to do, it's going to be a little bit of a long video because I want to explain this properly. And I'm going to lap this, okay, but I'm just going to show you. So we're going to take lapping compound and we're going to put it on the crankshaft and inside the new flywheel, and we're going to lap it so it's a perfect fit, because we're not going to have a keyway in there. We're just relying on pressure fit with the nut. So now you take your aftermarket. Now I've removed the assembly here for the charging system just to do this so it's out of the way. I'll put it back on in a minute. So we're going to set that flywheel right on that crank, and we're going to put it on here without turning the crank. Now the engine has got rope down in the cylinder to help it so it doesn't move the crank. And then you take your just to double check that you haven't moved your crank, you're going to take your, see it moved. You cabron. Okay, so what we're going to do, that was just the flywheel moving. So we're going to double check. Take our homemade position locator. I'm going to set this with that magnet. It's just beginning to start. Making contact there. Take this right here, we lay it across the crank, and the crank moved. a little bit. It moves. So one thing we could do is try and back up the crank a hair, and I'm going to do that on the back side of the motor assembly with a pair of channel locks. I'm going to turn that crank back just half a degree. Make sure you don't maul up anything when you're using channel locks. That should do it. Half a degree back. Come back and we're going to double check our measurements. Again, our custom made position gauge. Just set that right there. I'm going to double check this here. We're there. Okay, and that's how you do that. So there's no keyway in here. What's going on is the flywheel is just lightly set on here. That's why it's kind of floating around. So we double check. We got our magnet just beginning to make contact. Put your fingernail in there. Double check our scratch marks, our score marks on the crank. And she moved, I think. No, we're on the money. We're right there, okay? So, of course, you got to keep it from moving. See how it's moving on me? That's why we need to lap it. When I lap it, when you put it on, it's going to be there. It ain't going to float so much. But you get the general idea of what I'm doing here. We got to make sure the crank stays in the correct position that it was with the old flywheel on. And we've got to keep our magnet at the start of its cycle onto this charging coil or ignition coil. So we're there. That's it. So what you would do now is you would put your nut on, your crank, and not allow that to move. So that's how you do it. All right. Go ahead.